This is the Mobile Tech Podcast, brought to you by worldpodcasts.com. Now here's your host, Tech Girl, Miriam Joire.
Hi, and welcome to the Mobile Tech Podcast. I'm your host, Miriam Joire, and today is Black Friday, November 24th, 2017. My guest is Sean Hollister of CNET. Hi, Sean. How are you?
Great. It's great to be talking to you again.
Yeah, it's so nice to have you on the podcast. I don't think I've ever had anybody from CNET on, but I mean, it's only number 29, I think. So there's a few more years and I'll have all of you. Yeah, I'd like to have Scott on at some point. So if you can put in a good word.
Absolutely.
I think I reached out to him, but I haven't heard back. Anyway, Black Friday, so we can talk about some deals. But you know what I really want to talk about? Because I just came back from being away for 3 weeks, is the OnePlus 5T.
Yes, indeed.
Do you have one?
I don't yet. We reviewed one for CNET very recently, though.
Okay, good. I just got mine this morning. I just did an unboxing video literally just before jumping on Skype with you for this podcast. So you guys listening to this now will definitely find the video on my YouTube channel. Go check it out. And I obviously didn't get it till today because I was away, but I'll let you know what I think. What's your take on reading the various reviews? Let's just discuss what the general zeitgeist on this phone is right now.
I mean, I feel like people are a little bit confused that the camera's changed because people are really into this normal lens and then there's zoom lens so you can zoom in on things. And we don't exactly have that anymore now, do we? With the OnePlus 5T. But the screen's bigger, it seems like a nicer phone in some ways. But for me personally, I like my phones a little bit smaller and I really like a great camera. And I was looking forward to having maybe a zoom camera on this one because I'd seen them do it with the previous one. And instead they're going for something a little bit different. They've got the low light camera instead as their secondary, which I think is intriguing, super intriguing.
Definitely. I question that decision though. I mean, to me, why not put a good OIS system on the main camera and call it a day at that point?
Exactly, which is what we just saw Google do with the Pixels, right? They said one camera is good enough if you put everything in it. And now OnePlus has two in order to get some of everything.
Well, then granted, nobody else has had access. I don't think anybody else, maybe Samsung and LG are the only ones that could do this at this point, is you use the dual pixels on the sensor for depth perception and for portrait mode. So I don't think OnePlus has access to that technology.
Is that exclusive to them though? I thought everybody was using Sony sensors at this point. And
no, I think it's not exclusive, but it requires know-how they don't have in-house.
Okay. Because I do feel like we're at the point where the camera is one of the main distinguishing pieces between one high-end smartphone and another, and they really do have that edge with the dual pixel sensors. You're right.
Oh, for sure. But I mean, the dual pixel sensors using dual pixel for autofocus is a pretty common thing. It's using dual pixel for depth perception. Nobody's done that other than Google on the Pixel 2.
Right, and that's the computational photography know-how.
Exactly. And I think the only other people to be able to pull this off potentially at this point is LG and Samsung and maybe Apple. But I don't think anybody else has the chops to be able to do that. It requires custom coding of the ISP, I think.
There you go. Yeah, that's definitely...
I mean, that's my theory.
Well, it makes a lot of sense to me. And definitely teams that have a lot of software know-how are going to be able to do that a little bit easier. And we're seeing like a lot of phones come out now where I feel like the camera software know-how isn't quite there. I've been playing with the Razer Phone recently. I've been playing with the Essential Phone, and those apps are just so bare bones, and the pictures are, so lacking, not because of the cameras themselves, but because the software know-how isn't there.
Yeah, I mean, that's definitely my take on the flagship situation right now. There is those who do the camera right and those who do the camera wrong. And in the camera wrong box, there is, Essential, there is the Razer, there is the OnePlus 5, there is the Z2 Force. I'm only picking flagship grade 835 phones here. Mm-hmm. But all those do not live up to what I expect today from a camera on a flagship, meaning what we see on Samsung's phones with the S8 and Note 8 and even the S7 prior, and then the Pixel 2, the let's see, the Apple phones and the iPhones, and then what else do we have? LG with the V30 and the G6, and all of those, right? And it's like, it's vexing. It's vexing.
Is.
How can they screw this up?
I feel like the real test, the real pain point for me is that if you load Google's camera app onto any of these 835 devices, because it was designed to work with the Snapdragon 835 ISP. If you load that onto any of these devices, it takes way better pictures often than the software that came on the phone. And that's how you can really tell it's software. You put Google's app on there, you take this leaked APK and stick it on your phone. All of a sudden, you're taking amazing automatic HDR shots all the time instead of struggling with what's on the phone to begin with.
And I did that with my Essential. So, question to you. Are you talking about the Pixel 2 app or the Pixel 1 app? Because I'm using the Pixel 1
I'm actually talking about the Pixel 1 app. Yeah, I haven't even started with Pixel 2.
So, Pixel 1 app is available on XDA forums or on APK Mirror or wherever. One of those sites, you can get it. And it works not on every phone. So, for example, I tried it on the G6 back in the day, which is an 821 phone, which should work. Doesn't work. Tried it on the Mi Mix 2 835 phone, didn't work. And when I say didn't work is you can install the app, but it crashes the moment you launch it.
Yeah. Developers are still tweaking it a little bit. Some of the some of the freelance developers out there got their hands on this. They're tweaking it to work with various phones. So maybe not.
So now my APK is a little old now because I didn't go and fetch another one. But the one I got, which is from back in May or June, works fine on the Essential and it makes the Essential actually usable as a camera phone.
So much better.
Right, but you lose monochrome. Well, you don't lose it because you have to start the other camera up to get the monochrome.
I don't know if you're losing that much, to be honest. I haven't seen a scenario where
that's the point. I mean,
combining the two helps. It's only when you're saying, I'm going to take a black and white shot intentionally that you really get a difference.
So that's when I go to the actual native camera app. I want an intentional monochrome shot. But it's sad because, you see what Huawei has done with the monochrome camera, right? On the P10 and the Mate 9 and the Mate 10. Oh, it's phenomenal. I mean, they are doing a number of things computationally here. They started with a P9 and then it trickled down to the Mate 9 and the P10 and on the Mate 10. And it continually evolves and improves. The P9 only had basically a monochrome and a color lens that were identical in spec. And then the Mate 9 added OIS to both lenses.
Oh.
And then the P10 added portrait photography to that. And then the Mate 10 now adds a whole bunch of AI-based computational photography to that for both portrait and automatic detection of what's in the scene to optimize the camera settings. So basically, they do neural network AI processing of the image in real time to say, oh, this is a sunset over a city.
Right.
And what should I do to the ISP to make this come out better? Kind of what Google does with Pixel 2. So it's kind of interesting.
I want to get back to OnePlus 5T and find out what you like about that phone. But just for a moment, since we're on Huawei, isn't it incredible how powerful this company's become? I feel like they might be, the company that really, really made a huge splash in the US. If they can ever get their name out here, if they can ever or maybe they rebrand or something, because they are doing some really amazing things with phones, like you're saying.
Oh my God, yeah. But I mean, it's been going on for a long time. I've been following this for a while. And I mean, honestly, I think the P9 was a turning point and followed by the Honor 8 in the US, which is basically a P9 for the US market.
But have you ever seen one of those in the wild in the US?
No, of course not. But,
Right.
but that's the problem, right? I mean, but the reality is, it's going to take some time, but I think it's a smart strategy for Huawei and Honor. And there is a whole problem right there with the fact that they have two brands and two lineups that are sold in the US, and it's even blurring the waters further. I've told them that many times, right in their face at the execs. I said, this is a strategic mistake to have these two brands and not define clearly what they are in the US if you want to eventually grow to this market. But the thing is, that they are going after us, the tech media and the early adopters and tech savvy folk, and creating a brand image that Huawei makes super high-end phones that compete easily with Samsung and Apple. And I think that's very smart. Yeah. You got to start somewhere, and you're not going to be able to get anywhere with the carriers, right, in this country. I mean, the reality is they don't care until, there's demand from the customers. They're not going to deal with it. So you got to create that demand somehow.
I feel like the early adopters, that's smart. It's smart because if you just have a track record of great products and people just see time after time, if the early adopters and the tech reviewers see time after time that you're making great products, then when it rolls around and you do decide to launch here in a meaningful way, we'll be there to tell people about it.
Yeah.
Few missteps though, like the Nexus 6P. That's actually a Huawei device, right?
It's a great Huawei device.
It's a great Huawei device until you find it boot looping on you and things.
Well, I haven't had that, so I don't care. Okay. So it's a great Huawei device. I have two of them that I use extensively. I've never had an issue. It's the same thing with a lot of people are telling me, why do you love LG phones? I've only had problems with LG phones. I have never had an LG phone crap out on me. And I've used them as my daily drivers a lot, including the Nexus phones. And I don't understand what people are complaining about. I'm sure it happens, but I think it's just a vocal minority. I think there's just a few of them that had a really bad experience, and they happen to be very vocal in forums.
I hope that's true.
I don't think it's more of an issue than any other phone. I've got lots of phones that crap out. I've had a friend have, like a perfectly good Pixel crap out on them because, I don't know, something went wrong with the connector. It almost caught fire. It's like... Yeah. It's an HTC phone. That never happens,
but
right?
The OnePlus 5T. So $500 for flagship specs. Yeah, the cameras are a little different than before, but this is a pretty incredible price yet again from OnePlus for what you're getting. What do you like about it? What do you not like about it?
I love OnePlus. I'll be saying this. I mean, I'm slightly biased. Immediately, they're kind of like an underdog. They're close to my heart. I think there's a lot of things they've did wrong. The OnePlus 2 was definitely a mistake, I think, in many ways. And they recover from that with the 3. And the 5, I think, was a good step forward for them. Exploring this dual camera stuff, not getting it right. I knew it would be the case, but they needed to do something, right? The 3 and 3T had basically on paper what you needed spec-wise. They had a good sensor, a fast lens, f/2.0 is okay. They had OIS, but yet they didn't shine in imaging, right? So they tried something else. I think they made the wrong choice. I think going telephoto on the 5 and doing portrait mode added complexity that they did not have the expertise to handle. They should have just focused on a single lens OIS camera with f/1.7 that really, really, really nailed imaging. And then on the 5T, then they could have enhanced upon that. What they did with the 5T is kind of like fix... It's weird what they did. They basically said, we want to keep portrait mode and we don't know how to do it with a single lens, so we're going to put 2 lenses in. But we really messed up the telephoto last time, so we're not going to put that in anymore. And a lot of people bitched about the low light performance of the 5, so we're going to improve the low light performance of 5, not by doing the most obvious things that you would do, which is add OIS, but adding a second camera with a larger sensor and smaller pixels with a fast lens f/1.7 and only kick it in when the light level is below 10 lux. And I don't know if you know what 10 lux is, guys, but it's really low light. Like you're talking about just the glow of an LED in a bedroom kind of level of light.
Yeah.
And so does it work? Well, I just got the phone. I'll let you know. But my readings and my discussions with many people online has been that no, it doesn't really work in the sense that it doesn't kick in when it kicks in so rarely, first of all. And when it does pixel binning. So it takes a 20 megapixel picture and it combines 4 nearby pixels into one. You're quartering the resolution down, right? To 5 megapixel, which is still fine. And does all kinds of computational goodness on filters and noise reduction to get an acceptable photo, which is a proven technology. PureView on Nokia, Lumia, and Microsoft phones did that for years and it worked. The problem is that it happens so rarely that the only thing this camera does is the occasional low light shot and then portrait mode. When really, it's like, it seems wasted. And, I would have done very differently. I think I would have done a monochrome sensor. like Huawei does, and combine the monochrome and color sensor at all times to improve dynamic range, which is what Huawei does. That Huawei phones have the best dynamic range of, together with their work with Leica, really shines. They incredible dynamic range because they're doing two sensors. One is focusing on light only, and one is doing the color stuff. And the light one is a higher resolution one, 20. And so they could exactly do that with a monochrome sensor instead of a color sensor on that 20 megapixel. And they didn't do that. I've never seen an application using two cameras the same way as OnePlus is. It's new to me, this concept of a 16 and a 20 megapixel, both roughly the same field of view, f/1.7, and one only kicks in low light and does pixel binning only. And then it's getting used for portrait. Weird.
Seems like it's just really
new
and kind of dumb.
and my point is when you're OnePlus, you don't have the imaging expertise. You don't do new. Okay,
so you
don't try.
I know that's not their strength. Their strength is not to innovate. It's to bring these things down to a crazy low price while keeping the quality very high. But you know what I do like about the OnePlus 5T? You know what my favorite thing about it is? Well, guess what it is?
The screen.
No. It's the fingerprint sensor placement.
Oh, in the back, yeah, that's fantastic.
I love
fingerprint sensors.
Fingerprint sensor divots on the backs of phones. I loved it in my LG V30. I love it in the Pixel phones, and I love it here in the OnePlus 5T. That is where the fingerprint sensor should go because it's where your index finger is naturally going to rest on the back of the phone, and you can use it to log in immediately there. You can use it to keep the phone balanced nicely because it's got that little divot, so you got a place to have it perch and grasp it easily in one hand. I wish everybody would just give up and do that.
I agree 100%. And of course, Apple's moving on to Face ID. And I think we're going to see full-on Face ID next year for everything. And OnePlus, it did introduce a Face ID Lite, fake Face ID, whatever you want to call it. It's interesting because it's not just the face vector, like it's not just the face biometrics recognition that Android's had for a long time now, since the Nexus.
Oh God, was it? Long time.
Galaxy Nexus?
Was it Galaxy Ice Cream Sandwich they introduced that, or was it earlier? I don't know.
Yeah, I think it's Ice Cream Sandwich. Okay. So Galaxy Nexus, right?
I think so. That sounds about right.
Anyway, it never really worked very well because you could use a photo to... anyway, the point is this is slightly better because it does some more depth-ish type stuff to the signal, whatever. I don't know exactly how it works. I need to read up on it.
Yeah, me neither.
People are saying it's pretty reliable and they know it's not as secure as Face ID, but I think it's Apple's onto something with Face ID because they're on to doing continuous authentication, like continuous, validation of the credentials, right? If you pass the phone to someone else, it theoretically could stop showing up notifications. You know what I'm saying?
Yeah. I mean, the incredible thing about Face ID is forget about how, what Apple is promising, how secure it is. Forget about how secure you think it is. The banks have agreed it's secure enough you can make payments. And that is the benchmark. If people are willing to throw money at this security technology, if they think it's that secure, then it's secure enough to really make some use out of. And this one isn't in the OnePlus 5T. You can't do the payments.
No. So, but I mean, it's good because when you're looking at your phone, being able to just unlock it is nice. And even though it doesn't do it, anyway, the point is, I think I'm happy that they did that. It's an interesting kind of like. I want to say half-assed because that sounds bad, but because it's not half-assed, but it's kind of a halfway step towards doing what Apple is doing. It's more reliable and faster than Samsung's retinal scan thing or whatever, which for me doesn't work on any of their phones ever, no matter what glasses I'm wearing or not wearing. I don't know. I can't get it to work on Samsung.
It's just a hassle. I mean, that's a good point. I mean, you compare this to Samsung. Samsung's thing is still easy to fool and or doesn't work. It is a hassle to use. The Apple one is easy and works great, and you can use it for payments. This is like in between. It works fine. It's not a hassle to use, but it's not going to take you all the way there.
Correct. So I think I'm happy to see them do that. I love the fingerprint placement. Things I love about the OnePlus 5T. Mm-hmm. Let's go. For screen, ever since I reviewed the G6 for Chip Chick. There was the first ultra wide display 2:1 aspect ratio 18:9 that I used. I was like, this is the future. Maximize screen real estate and minimize phone size is the future. Now the 5T doesn't pull that off because it's a pretty big phone. It's actually, even though it's not that much bigger when you put it side by side with the 5, which I just did in my unboxing video like half an hour ago, I was surprised that like my gut feeling unboxing it, like looking at it the first time was like, this is huge, but it's not. It's only slightly bigger than the 5, but man, it feels so much bigger somehow. Yet it's not, and 6 inches is pretty decent for that physical frame that they have there. But I like the V30. That's a sweet spot for me. You reviewed it, so we'll talk about it in a minute.
Yes.
The V30, like the S8 is too small. The S8 Plus is too big. The Note 8 is too big, way too big. But the V30 is perfect. And I think the V30 is 5.9 or 6 inches, and it's still smaller than the OnePlus 5T. So the OnePlus 5T does have slight edges and slight bezels top and bottom that are still a little bigger than what you see on a V30. And then the Pixel 2 XL has ridiculous bezels for the kind of display.
I don't know why they're so large there. Why?
Because the squeeze.
Because the squeeze.
They have to put the squeeze sensors in the size.
I don't.
Who needs the squeeze? I agree. Nobody cares about the squeeze. They could have done. If you put a Pixel 2 XL, same display, side by side with the V30. The V30 is such a sexier phone. I'm like, I don't understand how it's possible to make so much bezel on a phone that's supposed to be bezel-less. But maybe it's not supposed to be bezel-less. Maybe that's the thing. Maybe Samsung has spoiled us, and in a way, LG have spoiled us because they're the makers of displays, and they define what it should be with the G6, V30, S8, S8 Plus, Note 8. And now we're like, oh, everybody else is trying to do it, but they're not achieving it somehow. You know?
Yeah.
I don't know.
So the manufacturer for the Pixel 2 XL is what? HTC, right? That's the HTC is the OEM behind.
No, Pixel 2 XL is LG. Pixel 2 is HTC.
Okay. So I mean, if
that's why it's an LG display.
That's what I thought. So if LG is building both phones, why would Google allow them to, keep the sexier design for their own phone? Wouldn't Google say, "Give us your sexiest design"?
No, because Google wanted to make some profits on these phones, and they made LG make a cheap phone. It's a cheaper phone to make than the V30.
I guess that's true. Yeah, that's got to be true.
I mean, the V30 honestly is one of my favorite phones of the year. I mean, let's talk about the V30 for a second. Let's segue into the V30.
Okay.
Because you reviewed it recently. I've played with it since I still use my pre-production prototype because it's unlocked and I don't want to use a locked US phone, which is the one they sent me, I think is the Verizon one.
They sent me an AT&T and it is just so loaded with bloat. I had to go through like 5 different setup screens denying various monitoring that they wanted to do. It used up like 1/3 of a gigabyte of my data downloading apps through its AT&T program that I didn't want and didn't ask for. Just crazy, stupid bloatware on here. If you're looking at a V30, please, for the love of God, buy the unlocked version. It does CDM and GSM and CDMA, works on any carrier, and costs the same amount as the carrier versions. You can get it for the same amount of money.
Never buy a carrier phone, guys. You hear it from us all the time, tech journalists. Look, you can put it on your credit card and do monthly payment plan if you have to, but just forget using their payment plan and they're rolling into your actual cell phone plan BS. Like, don't do it.
It's not worth all the
buy
pain.
your phones unlocked. You own the terminal up front. Like, imagine buying a car that you can only fill up at Shell stations and drive on Shell roads.
So true.
Would you do that? You wouldn't. So
some
do
people
the same
would.
with your phone.
Some people would, but thank God.
Some people totally
Thank
would.
God they won't.
Some people totally would.
If you told them their car only cost, $10 a day, they might do it. But anyhow, you're listening to this podcast. You're smarter than that. Don't do it. Tell your friends not to do it. Anyhow, aside from the bloat,
Thanks,
the V30.
Sean. I like it.
The V30 is pretty phenomenal. I mean, I do not understand why, aside from the camera, the Pixel 2 XL is so much worse because this is just it's a great phone. It feels great in the hand, even though for me personally, you say the V30 is just the right size. The S8 is a little bit too small. I like smaller phones. I think the S8 feels a little bit better in my hand.
You know, the one that really, as an aside, has really made me happy to use in the last, I only got one about 2 or 3 weeks ago and I've been using it extensively. I was away for 3 weeks. I just got back. And so I was on a holiday trip. I went to Morocco and I brought a bunch of phones with me.
Oh, nice.
And the one that's really size-wise made me go like, this is the perfect phone size, was the Essential.
Yes. I've got 2 of them in front of me right now.
Andy Rubin did a lot of things wrong in this phone's launch.
I don't understand why would he do these things wrong though? He's the guy who made Android happen. He's the guy who made Sidekick happen. He's known for this incredible batch of software, and yet it's the hardware that's right about the Essential and the software that's weird.
Correct. It's weird, right? But I mean, the hardware, wow, the hardware on that phone, other than the camera. Look, honestly, there's actually nothing wrong with the camera if you use the Pixel app. But here's what's wrong with the camera, even if you use a Pixel app, no OIS. If that camera had OIS on the main shooter and you use the Pixel camera app, you'd be in heaven with that camera.
Okay, here's the question. Would you be willing to accept a camera bulge in the Essential phone for OIS? Because they say it's to get rid of the bulge. That's the reason they did it. So it's nice and flush. The whole phone is just this beautiful monolithic slab.
I would not be willing to accept the bulge because I think the design is perfect. But at the same time, I think that's BS when they're saying that they did it because it would protrude, because it wouldn't. There are like V30, OIS on the main module, doesn't protrude, has a screen on top of the camera module. I mean, it's possible.
Very slightly protrudes. Like there's very but my point is,
you could do that on the. If you did that to the Essential, it still wouldn't ruin it. I think the point is that they can't get the modules. They cannot get the modules. They can't afford the modules.
I think it's that. But also, I mean, it seems like I don't know if it's just me, but I feel like at some point, some manufacturer of dual color monochrome modules came to these companies and said, we're promising you the world. We're going to do amazing things. You get this thing from us now and you're going to have an amazing camera and we'll keep issuing updates so you can have like depth and all kinds of crazy dual camera features. Because I look at the Razer phone and I look at the Essential and I'm like, there's got to be some module maker behind them that was just promising these phone companies the world.
Well, I hate to say that, but maybe it's not the module makers. Maybe it's Qualcomm.
Really?
And I'm not saying that in a bad way because I love Qualcomm and I think they're doing the right thing. I think that they are definitely delivering on what can be done with the software on these phones. But I think they're underestimating what we enthusiasts in camera buffs deem to be important. They're looking at more as a holistic view of, imaging is part of a whole bunch of things. It's part of course, saving your memories of your family and friends and your daily life, which is why most people want a good camera today on their phones. But they're also looking at, we want to be able to do AR. We want to be able to do a bunch of other stuff, right? So the moment you add multiple camera modules, even if you have to cut costs and remove OIS, right? Mm-hmm. You are opening AR, depth perception. You're opening the way for other things that the camera can be used to that are kind of like things that Qualcomm is pushing, right?
I mean, theoretically, but that's assuming that the phone manufacturers are going to spend the time to deliver the updates and deliver the APIs needed to make those things work.
Some do. I mean, look, HTC U11, U11 Plus, right? Worked closely with Qualcomm on the imaging and delivered. Right?
Yeah.
OnePlus, Qualcomm offered them all the same stuff, right? Qualcomm is the same ISP and is offering the same software package to them, is offering to work with them to fine-tune things. Did they take that offer? No, because they wanted to go to market really quickly. And I think that's one of the again, I'm a big fan of OnePlus, but one of the issues they have is that they don't follow through. Do you think we're going to see a lot of updates on this OnePlus 5T camera? No. The OnePlus 6 is what they're working on now, and it's coming out in March.
I'm surprised we've seen as many updates for Essential. I think it's only because they really, really need to repair their reputation after not shipping quickly, after the delays that they're putting so much effort into the software. It actually is getting some updates. I don't think they're enough, but they are there. They're putting a lot of software updates into the Essential.
For sure. My take basically on the OnePlus 5T so far, after like unboxing it basically and reading other people's reviews, is weird camera setup that I don't think really solves the problem they're having. And that, it only enables one thing that they really want. They couldn't go back on, which was portrait mode, but they did go back on the telephoto, which I think personally was more useful than what they have now. If I know the low light performance is kind of meh, I'm going to live with that. But, they removed a pretty major feature, removing the telephoto, which is a feature that, Apple has. And I think for a lot of people who don't know much about photography, seeing a dual lens system, they assume that one of those lenses is either a tele-lens or ultra wide angle like on the LG. Some of them, very few people know about the monochrome thing. And going back to Huawei again briefly, the way they're doing it is actually very interesting, because they're using they're using two sensors all the time, and they can do portrait mode and stuff. But the mono sensor is 20 megapixel and allows pixel binning and all kinds of software trickery for zoom. They have a lossless 2x zoom. So they essentially have a telephoto lens. See what I'm saying?
I guess I can see that. Yeah.
But it's the same as the 41 megapixel PureView phones, right? Like they could zoom up to 4 times losslessly because the output's a 5 megapixel photo, right?
So let's go back to the LG V30 though, because here we've got dual cameras being used for something that's, one, spectacular, and two, very easy to understand.
And more importantly, they're not trying to do portrait photography.
Yeah, there's no special depth here. There's no special portrait modes here like on iPhone. It's just you now have the ability to zoom out to do wide angle photography. You can do landscapes.
Fantastic.
You can do
the number of times that I can't move backwards physically to take a shot, and I use the wide angle on my V30 or G6 to do it. It's surprisingly high, actually.
I started shooting that way default because I'd be out and about. I'd be like, I would rather see a different perspective on my photos than I get from every other phone. I'd like to see more of the surroundings. And so I started just shooting that way. I would shoot inside my house. I'd get my my daughter, June. She just turned 1 recently. I'd get pictures of her. Thank you. I'd get pictures of her, playing with her food and playing with toys and so on. And you can get so close and get so much. You can get down like into her world with this wide angle lens. And you can't do that with a normal lens. With a normal lens, you're always a photographer outside the scene taking pictures of something over there. And with the wide angle, you are inside the scene, taking pictures of stuff all around you. I saw this Ferrari out on the street in Saratoga. I asked the owner, hey, can I take a picture of your car? I took one with the normal lens on the Samsung S8 Plus, and it was like, okay, I'm looking at a cool car. I can see the interior. Then I brought the LG V30 up right over the passenger compartment. Now it looks like you're in the car. It looks like you're driving this thing. You're inside looking at the beautiful leather interior. It's just such a difference, and I wish more companies would try this wide-angle thing,
Yeah, well, so the only other person who's done it so far is Motorola with one of their phones. Let me think, what phone was it? Oh, boy. One of the G5S Plus or the X4? Which one was it?
Boy, I can't remember. X4 is the new one.
Yeah, well, the G5S Plus is also around this. They came out around the same time. I'm Googling it.
Me too.
Moto G5S Plus. I believe that's the one that's got the wide angle on it.
So it says the 8 megapixel has a 120 degree field of view on the X4. So I'm thinking it's the X4 because 120 degrees sounds nice and wide to me.
Yeah, you do look at the specs on the X4. I'll look at the specs on the other one. That way we are covered. Yeah,
we're doing the work for you on the podcast.
I know. Usually I tell them to look it up, but I think I kind of like it. Okay, so correct. I think you're right because the Z2 Force definitely has a mono and color lens, right? It's like doing the Huawei thing. Mm-hmm. The G5S Plus has a dual 13 megapixel on the back. And it doesn't tell you anything about them. Great.
Yeah, the spec
So what are you reading there?
What are you reading I am not finding a spec page here on Motorola's site, which is super dumb.
If you type GSM Arena has really good.
I do use GSM Arena a lot of the time. Okay, here we go. Rear camera. Yeah, here we go. 8 megapixel ultra wide angle with 120 degree field of view. It's an f2.2 aperture and 1.12.
So that's the X4.
Megapixels. Yeah, X4 has.
Okay, so the X4 is the phone that Moto did. So the only other phone other than LG that can do wide angle on one lens is the X4.
Incidentally, it's $60 off right now for Black Friday.
That's a good deal, actually. I really like that phone.
It's already
I reviewed it.
relatively
I reviewed the
inexpensive.
Android One version, so I don't know about the other one. But the Android One has my blessing. It's beautifully made, too. It's a glass sandwich of the best kind.
$340 US for unlocked X4, pretty much anywhere right now. Newegg, Walmart, Jet, B&H Photo, Best Buy. Yeah.
It's good. That's
Lots.
good. So anyway, going back to, I know we're talking, like we're doing circles. I love it. It's kind of great because we're touching on the 3 phones we want to touch on repeatedly, which is great. So
We're not touching the Razer yet, but we'll do more.
5T. Well, I don't have, honestly, like this is a weird thing about, okay, I did a huge amount of coverage on the Nextbit phone back in the day. And then, I figured that if Razer did a phone, because their PR and marketing people got absorbed, that they would reach out to me. Nope, they completely ignored me. I didn't even know. Out of left field, I'm like surfing, the web, and all of a sudden I see this Razer phone, and I'm like, wait a minute, why didn't you offer me this under embargo at least, or a briefing or something? They didn't. So I finally reached out to them and asked for a review unit. I'm still waiting for a review unit. They're kind of dicking me around about it right now. Kind of like Essential. Essential took 3 months to deliver me a review unit. But once they did, I have to say I'm really impressed with it.
Hey, folks, carriers, manufacturers, people who make phones. Miriam knows her shit. Don't dick Miriam around.
Thanks, Sean. So the 5T, I love the screen. I love the fingerprint reader at the back. It's a bit bigger than I thought, and it feels a little bulkier, and that camera bump is really sticking out because the display is in the way. And that all of that is a little, it's a little weird. In a way, it's a step forward, right? The 2:1 ratio screen, the bezel-less display, the fingerprint reader in the back. And in a way, it's a step back because it's bulkier a little bit, like just enough that you notice the difference.
Yeah. Summing up my feelings, I mean, it's, like you say, it's a little bit, especially for me, because I like smaller phones, a little bit too big for me. It's still got the headphone jack, which I love. Which is great. It's got that fingerprint sensor placement, which I love. Camera thing's a little bit weird. The main reason I wouldn't get one, though, is because I still like the option to go to CDMA carriers. I still like the option to go Verizon, Sprint, Fi, etc. And this is GSM only, like every other phone they've made. So I just can't do that yet.
The other thing I want to add about the 5T is that it does have 8 gigs of RAM, 128 gigs of storage on some versions. I think maybe all versions. I don't know. Is there still a 6 gig, 64 gigabyte version, a cheaper one?
Not off the top of my head. I'm not sure.
Anyway, there was on the old one, but us reviewers, they always send us the best one. So the one I have is 8 gigs. 8 gigs kind of overkill, but at the same time, $500. Like you're getting a Snapdragon 835 flagship phone with a wide angle, like a widescreen display for $500. That's half the price of equivalent phones from the competition, or at least 2/3 of the price if you buy a G6 V30 S8 at a discount.
Okay.
Pretty impressive.
But if we're talking about $500 for that Snapdragon 835 phone, we got to talk about $500 for the Essential.
So let's talk about the Essential. As I said, 3 weeks now playing with it on this vacation/break I took. And I love the form factor. The size is absolutely perfect and it's all screen. It's
gorgeous.
And I like that. It's great.
Also,
camera has issues.
The white model. You don't get the fingerprints on the back the way you do with the black one.
I have the white one, and when I unboxed it, I had a little mini orgasm. You should watch that video on my YouTube channel. It's pretty funny. I was like, oh my God, I love white phones. And they send me a white review unit, and it's so sexy with the titanium, the bare titanium color. Oh, yeah, it's a sexy phone, perfect size. And with the Pixel camera, the camera is serviceable. Remember that the Pixel did not have OIS and did really well that way. And this is the same thing, basically a pretty decent fast lens with a pretty decent sensor and a decent camera app software-wise will give you quite some great photography on the Essential. So you're not completely SOL. It's what, $450 right now?
Oh, is it down to $450 now?
I don't know.
I don't know if they've got a Black Friday deal. It was $500 was the price drop. If they've got a Black Friday deal, I suppose it'd be a little.
I think it's $450.
Let me look.
Some ridiculous number like that.
No, we're at 500 still. 500 right now.
Okay, 500. Okay, well, 500. There you go. I mean, that's a tough call, honestly. Because it's kind of unique and different, I would go for the Essential, because I don't think the camera on the 5T is going to be any better.
Yeah, I mean, the hardware on this. I mean, the camera is. You're right. I don't think the 5T will necessarily be better camera. I do want to say you're still getting a better camera in a Pixel, in a Samsung, even the LG V30.
But if you're looking at $500, right? You don't only have $500 to spend.
So you're not getting the best camera, but for $500, this is pretty phenomenal. I'm actually having to re-review this phone for CNET, because when I reviewed it the first time, I said, I think I've got a quote here, we deserve more than this unfinished phone. I was like, $700, no way. The camera app's terrible. The battery life's merely okay. No headphone jack. For $700, you want more than that. For $500, though, its closest competition is the, now there's the OnePlus 5T. And then there's phones like the Motorola Z2 Play. So we're talking about a lower class of camera,
like the Z2
a lower class of processor.
Yeah.
And saying all that, the Z2 Play is the phone I just bought for myself 2 months ago. It is my phone now because of the battery life. The battery life on the Z2 Play is already fantastic. And then you could stick a battery pack onto it with the magnetic mods.
Yeah, I know.
I just bought one. There was this crazy deal on AT&T has this deal for $10 for the Incipio Moto Mods battery pack, which gives you like 150% battery life, and it does both forms of wireless charging. It's normally $80. It was $10. And I was like, okay, maybe I should just buy
That's
3
totally
of these.
Worth it. Yeah, for sure.
And then have battery for days.
Excellent. I like the Z2 Play. Like I keep telling people, if you had to pick between the Z2 Force and the Z2 Play, buy the Z2 Play.
It's true. It's so true.
Because headphone jack, because honestly, if it's a single camera, it's a really decently sorted camera, actually, for a mid-range camera.
It's okay.
And you get the Moto Mods, and the same industrial design as the Big Brother, but you don't get a scratchable screen like the Big Brother.
Well, it's shatterproof though. You could drop that Z2 Force screen over.
Do you know how
again.
It's scratched on everybody?
It does,
everybody has scratches out the kazoo.
All you got to do is you put a tempered glass screen protector on your Z2 Force. When you drop it, that thing breaks, but your screen doesn't, and you don't get the scratches either. It's the best of both worlds.
That's true. Speaking of scratches, and this is because I blame the Sahara Desert where I was, the screen on my Essential is scratched to shit. Like, I cannot believe. It's interesting because I talked to the PR folks and I said, hey, I took 5 phones with me to the desert. Pixel 2 XL, V30, Note 8, Essential, Mi Mix 2. I think that's it. That's 5, right? And of all of them, the only one, and they saw the same action, I tried to not dump them in the sand, but, in the desert, you're going to end up with some sand in your pockets accidentally, like tiny amounts of it, like little grains of it, not like buckets of sand in my pockets. And so I was prepared from a few scratches from the sand, and none of my phones have scratches except the Essential. And the Essential is not the back, just the front.
Here's
the back is ceramic.
Here's my question. Are any of your other phones using Gorilla Glass 5?
Probably not.
I might get in trouble for this, but this is something I've been starting to investigate a little bit. Gorilla Glass 5, as you might know, the Corning's latest, Gorilla Glass cover for these different phones. It is
more shatterproof.
It's designed to be more shatterproof. And the thing about glass is, think about any material you're going to use for one of these things, is there's always a trade-off between scratching and shattering. Because the harder you make something, the less likely it's going to... more brittle it is. Less likely it's going to scratch, the more likely it's going to break. And this is not just... And the Essential phone uses Gorilla Glass 5, and it's getting mysterious scratches. And you know what else uses Gorilla Glass 5?
Am I not the only one? Are you talking about other people getting scratches on the Essential then?
And I'm talking about the iPhone 8. And I'm talking about the iPhone 10. And I'm talking about what was the other phone I tried the other day that mysteriously got a scratch? And so I was playing around with this stuff, and I was like, wait a second, where did these mysterious scratches come from? I walked into an Apple store with an iPhone 8 that I was trying to fix an issue with, and all of a sudden there was this crazy scratch on the screen. It's like, what's going on there? And I was like, oh, interesting how all of these Gorilla Glass 5 phones are getting scratches where the Gorilla Glass 4 phones weren't.
It's weird.
So I think there's something going on there.
My Essential phone is a really bad example now, because if you look at the front glass, it's not immediately visible, but the moment you get a bit of an angle and a reflection on it, you're like, whoa, what happened? Sahara Desert sand is what happened. A few grains got in my pocket somehow, I don't know. I do have a tiny scratch, a tiny one in the middle of my Mi Mix 2 as well, but I don't think that's Gorilla Glass 5. And then my Pixel 2 XL is spotless, my Note 8 is spotless, my V30 is spotless. It's very weird because they all got used in the same conditions in similar pockets. I do not understand it. As an aside, on this trip, I used the Pixel 2 XL as my main camera shooter, particularly for low light shots. I used the V30 for all the wide angle shots, the Note 8 for all the telephoto shots, right? Of course, the luxury I have here. Wow. And then the Essential and the Mi Mix 2 were kind of like wild cards. I was like, well, I just received them before flying out. Might as well just take them on the trip and see what happens. And the Essential, as I said, with the Pixel camera app is great. The Mi Mix 2 has a decent camera out of the box, but you can't install the Pixel camera.
Yeah.
The drawback of the Mi Mix 2, I love the phone in every way, but it's a bit bigger than I'd like it to be, even though it's bezel-less on 3 sides. Is that the drawback is that the camera app is kind of crap. Like there's no auto HDR at all. So you have to manually switch HDR on and off. And when I try to install the Pixel cam that would do this for me, it just crashes. So basically I'm SOL. I have to find another way. Like basically that's what kills the Mi Mix 2 photography wise for me. But in every other way, I mean, the one they sent me is like the super expensive gold ceramic one. That's
I gotta say,
fancy.
if you've never seen the Mi Mix 2, try to look up some pictures of it right now and then try to get your hands on one in person, because it is just phenomenal design. The screen on the front of that, like it looks like it's all screen. They say the iPhone 10's all screen. They say this V30 and the Samsung's all screen. This is a phone that puts those other claims to shame.
But you know what's interesting? Because to me, the Essential feels even more like that. Even though it has a notch, it feels like it goes really to the edge. I feel that compared to the original Mi Mix, the Mi Mix 2 does have a bit of bezel now. Like there's a little bit, there's a millimeter or two there, whereas the Essential really feels like it goes right to the edges.
The camera notch kind of kills it for me. I mean, I know some people it's a polarizing thing. Some people care about the notch, some don't. I like the way the notch looks in certain apps, like in Google Maps. It's kind of cool that you got that little dip there. But overall, it kind of kills that effect for me. Also, with the white version, you kind of get that halo around the edge. So when you're looking at it out of space, you don't just see the screen, you also see that white halo. Right. But I don't know. For me, the Xiaomi just blows me out of the water. And that's not just the Mi Mix 2. Earlier Xiaomis, too, have been doing this. You know, you look at it and it's kind of just screen is what you see. Even when it had bezel, it just blended into the bezel beautifully.
So here's what's interesting. I went to Gorilla at Corning's website, and Gorilla Glass 5 is on the following products. A whole bunch, but I'm not going to read them all, but the ones that matter to us. Galaxy S8 and S8 Plus. Yeah. But no Note 8. Is it the front or the back or both? That's the question.
That is a good question. I remember one of those phones used it on the front, but not the back.
I think it's the back, because the front of my Note 8, well, assuming the Note 8 is the same, glass choices as the S8 and S8 Plus, as I said, the front glass of my Note 8 is spotless despite the sand. The back has a few scratches, but they're mostly in the 4 corners, because you put the phone on maybe concrete or glass face up, and the back ends up having a little, corner scuffiness, but it's very, very, very minor. The HTC Bolt, HTC 10 Evo, HTC U Ultra, I have a feeling they haven't updated this in a while because all these phones are pretty
S8
old.
is both sides. S8 is of the Galaxy S8 and the S8 Plus.
Well, I didn't bring those to the desert, but I brought a Note 8. I'm assuming the Note 8 is the same.
Probably.
Huawei P10 and P10 Plus are Gorilla Glass 5, and the OnePlus 5, the not 5T, the 5.
Interesting.
Interesting, huh? Well, anyway, who knows? The point is that I was surprised that just the Essential got so scuffed up and not the other ones in the same conditions. So something is up there. And I don't know. It's too bad because now my Essential kind of looks a little worn out.
Ceramic
guess.
on the back, though. I wish more manufacturers would use ceramic. This thing is so tough, not just from scratches, but also drops. We dropped the shit out of this Essential phone for CNET, and that ceramic back survived everything. And then you think about the iPhone 10, where you have to pay like $500 if you break the glass back on that thing. Why couldn't they use ceramic? Please use ceramic.
I know ceramic is magic, and the Mi Mix 2, at least certain versions of it are ceramic. The one I have is it's gorgeous. It's beautiful. I'm really impressed with the industrial design and the user friendliness of the form factor of the Essential. And so, I'm gung ho, especially at the $500 price point, and especially if you use the Pixel camera app, you no longer have the drawbacks you had when you reviewed it. And then the V30 is a phenomenal phone. The audio on that phone, oh my god, the audio out of the headphone jack on the V30 is just sublime.
The speakers are shit.
Sublime,
speaker, I should say. But but the headphone jack
is bad,
it has a headphone jack for one thing, because this is a water resistance IP68 phone that has a headphone jack. Only Samsung's phones and this are water resistant with a headphone jack, and this thing is
correct.
It's great. You have to have decent headphones. I do have to say that if you plug in any old earbuds, you will not notice a difference at all. I tried it.
If you do the right thing and use the right earbuds or headphones, oh my god!
With my Bose QC25, it was this is better. And with a pair of Grottos, it was just
insane,
so
much
better.
I know. Yeah, I agree. I mean, if you're an audiophile like I am, like this is, I listened to that phone on on this trip as my main audio listening device with headphones, and it was, beautiful and amazing to be able to just, kind of like absorb that musical goodness when I was in, maybe like a stressful travel environment, like an airplane or whatever. Just great. And no other phone I have delivers that right now.
It's kind of an ignorance is bliss thing. I mean, it's kind of an ignorance is bliss thing because you don't know what you're missing, and I suppose you could keep not knowing what you're missing, but I do wish that there were more headphone jacks, and if they're going to be putting headphone jacks in products, maybe think about adding this, digital audio converter, the nice quad DAC they stuck in this thing, What
I want to see is a quad DAC, hi-fi DAC, the ESS chip that's in there. I want to see the first company to make that into a USB Type-C dongle. And then it solves the problem. Then we have that on any phone.
I'm not for dongles. Sorry.
Neither am I, but I'm just saying, like, considering more and more of the phones in my pockets have no headphone jack, Essential, Pixel 2 XL, who knows what's next?
Yeah.
Mi Mix 2, I don't know, Razer?
Tell me what you think of the Razer Phone's dongle, because they say they stuck a nice DAC in there.
So the dongle for the Essential is the best sounding one so far to me.
Okay.
The second best one, believe it or not, is the Pixel 2 XL and Pixel 2 dongles. The worst sounding one so far, and this is really sad considering HTC's history with really high quality audio, is the U11s. Really bad. Avoid it at all costs. Go to the Google store, buy a Pixel 2 dongle, which is readily available and easy to get and easily shipped in the US, and replace your U11 dongle with that.
They're cheap,
Trust me,
too.
you will be.
They don't cost a lot.
Yeah, it is insane how bad the U11 one sounds. It is just the crappiest, cheapest DAC and headphone amp they could stick in there. Whereas the Pixel 2, they seem to have kind of done a nice balance between quality and cost. And I think the Essential one, they didn't care about cost because they were going for that premium thing. And so, of course, I don't know if you can buy the Essential dongle readily or not, but the Mi Mix 2, I haven't tested the dongle yet, but I'll let you know what I discover. Okay. It's got to be pretty decent. Anyway.
So if we're talking about audio quality, We're talking about crazy audio. And if we're talking about ignorance is bliss, we got to talk about the Razer Phone some more. Because, okay, just two things you should know about the Razer Phone. Three things you should know about the Razer Phone. One, it's way too expensive at $700. This is another phone that came out at $700, should be $500. Like
it will be soon. Don't worry.
Yes, it will. Either that, or like many Razer products, it will simply disappear, because that also happens with Razer products. Very often, they'll make something for a small group of people and just say, "Hey, we made it. We made a big splash in the PR landscape. We made a lot of noise, and now we're going to just disappear this product." That happens too. But maybe it'll go down to $500. I'm hoping it does, because at $500 at any price, but especially $500 when this phone actually becomes reasonably priced, the speakers on this thing are insane.
Ah, that's what I heard.
They get so loud that people do not want to be in the same room with me.
Have you made enemies at work?
Not yet. But without getting ridiculously distorted, they're actually reasonably clear. And I'm not saying they got bass. I'm not saying this is a phone all of a sudden that can replace real speakers in your house. But I tell you, this phone, the speakers on this phone, single-handedly create the argument for why laptop manufacturers have no excuse with shitty speakers. Because these speakers blast the crap out of any laptop I've ever used. No question. In terms of volume and in terms of clarity. I put them next to, and all the other phones I got in my house. And not only can you not hear the other phones over the speakers here, but it sounds way better and clearer. The exception is if you take one of those giant, practically Bluetooth speaker-sized Moto mods, and you stick that on the. I was going to say,
is it better than the JBL?
It is not better.
Exactly. Is it better than?
It's not universally better than the JBL Sound Boost, because the JBL Sound Boost
that's a pretty good mod.
Has bass.
It's a great sounding mod.
It's a good sounding mod. It's a good sounding mod. Yep. It's got bass. It's got some clarity. I would say that for mids, the Razers are actually clearer in some of the scenarios I've used, probably because they're focused on that. But they just get so freaking loud and kind of clear. And it's amazing that they do that, and laptop manufacturers have no excuse anymore. But why do I want a pair of super loud speakers on a phone? That's what I haven't figured out.
Yeah, you want a good headphone jack instead. Because honestly, for me, look, everybody always says, like, yeah, but this phone has great speaker. I'm like, I don't care. Like, I don't do speakerphone calls with the speaker. And every now and then I need to share a YouTube video with someone. And I'm usually in too loud of an environment anyway, that even if the speaker is good, it's not loud enough. So no, I don't care. I want to give me a ESS quad hi-fi DAC any time of the day of the week. At least if I want to plug some speakers that are for sharing, I got a whole bunch of really cheap and decent quality Bluetooth speakers floating around my place.
And they told me straight up that the reasons this phone doesn't have a headphone jack and the reasons this phone is not water resistant are both because of the speakers. They needed a lot of, grating in order for the air to come out of the speakers. Obviously can't be water resistant there. And they take up the physical space that you'd need to put the headphone jack in. So the two things I would want from this phone are not there because of the speakers. And it's kind of annoying.
Interesting decision, right?
It's really annoying to me because they're amazing and they like, if that's what you want in a phone, sure. I just don't know anybody who'd want that in a phone. But the other piece, ignorance is bliss again, is the screen. 120 hertz display on this thing.
It's a big deal. I agree.
It is a crazy big deal. And I don't know if anybody's ever going to realize how big a deal it is, because most people are never going to touch one of these phones. And you can't capture this in a video.
Maybe other manufacturers, like maybe Samsung will have that on their phones soon.
Maybe. But the other thing is so Razer's head of mobile, Tom Moss, he told me, and this is a direct quote, you use this for a week and then go to any other phone, you're going to be upset. Because
I believe it.
The screen is so smooth, he claimed, that you go back to other phones, they look choppy. Well, you know what? I just did, and it's true. Every other phone on my desk here, I've got an LG V30, I've got an Essential phone, I've got a Moto a Z2 Play, and I've got an iPhone 8 Plus here. All of them look choppy now that I've been using this Razer phone. It's crazy. Yep. Like Android phones have always been a little bit choppier than iPhone, even with, their, what was that software rendering technique they added to Android a while back? I can't remember what it was, Project Butter or whatever.
Butter,
they added Butter to Android. It was kind of funny. Anyhow.
Butter.
It still wasn't quite up to Apple standard. And yes, even now, I'm looking at this iPhone, and it's not as choppy as the Android phones, but it still looks choppy compared to the Razer. I've gotten used to this ridiculous smoothness all the time, and now everything else looks terrible.
You are now a slave to the black monolith, Sean.
I know, but I'm not going to buy this thing because I don't have a headphone jack, and I don't need the speakers, and it's, too much money. And so I hope that I'm just going to get used to 60 hertz screens again. Maybe in another week or two of not using the Razer phone, I'll be back. But it makes me think that this is where phones are going to go shortly, that they're going to go to the 120 hertz screens because it's this form of lock-in almost that
for sure,
manufacturers will have to.
It's
or
like
else.
Retina. Once you live with Retina, right? Like I have Retina on my laptop, but I don't have Retina on my desktop. And it's like every time on my desktop, yes, I enjoy the screen real estate, but right? It's rough.
Yeah.
It's rough.
Yeah.
So I think, what you need to do, Sean, is go find a phone that runs at 30 hertz for a while. Like a Moto E4. Not that that's a bad phone, but I don't think it runs at 30 hertz anyway. But I'm just saying, like, find something really cheap and low end and get back in the groove, okay?
All right. I'll try to do that.
Let's finish this podcast with one more topic, which is 10th anniversary of Snapdragon.
Yeah, Snapdragon.
That was last week or the week before, I can't remember. But it's been 10 years since the Snapdragon S1.
Wow.
Which came on the G1. Or the HTC Dream, technically, which I think is actually...
Did they even call it Snapdragon then? I don't think so. I thought it had like alphanumerics or something.
Retroactively called it a Snapdragon. But...
I'm going to look it up right now.
10 years, it's been quite the Snapdragon adventure.
I have an HTC Dream right here, by the way.
Of course you do. Doesn't everyone?
Of course. It was my first phone.
So what's your take on Snapdragon of 10 years? How much we've changed in 10? Remember, single core 700 megahertz.
Yeah. I mean, it's kind of taken over everything in the United States at any decent, mid-range to high-end phone. They're all Snapdragon, but it's not because, Snapdragon is great. I like the chips. I like what they do for me. The integrated graphics in them have always been decent. The connectivity's always been pretty good. But the reason they're so ridiculously popular here is not because of any of those things. It's because of Qualcomm's crazy market power and their crazy, exclusivity arrangements and deals with these companies behind the scenes. And the fact that, as Miriam was alluding to earlier, that they build entire phones except for the externals for companies, which then tweak them and turn them around and turn them into the phones you see in front of you. They do so much of the legwork. There's nothing wrong with that. Nothing wrong with that at all. But it's this thing where it's great that they are good at what they do and they build great products, because if they had this kind of power they did and didn't, the phone market wouldn't be very good right now.
No. Honestly, there are not that many players anymore in the chipset market, right? There's Apple, which keeps it all to themselves and has it made by Samsung for them, right? Manufacturing wise.
So far, yeah.
So far for the 10 nanometer or whatever. Then there is, of course, Samsung doing Exynos, but we haven't seen an Exynos phone in the US in a while now.
No, they sell them abroad.
So we don't really know if they're competitive or not.
Yeah.
I'm sure that Ars Technica has done some deep research on that. Or who else would have done some deep research on that? Anandtech, if they're still around?
Yeah, Anandtech's still around. Anand works for Apple now.
No, I know. Anand and Brian both
Clark.
work for Apple.
They both work for Apple. So they lost some of their brains, but they still do a lot of great stuff in Anandtech.
Okay, good to know. And then there's Kirin, right? There's Huawei has their own chipsets, which are really good, really strong. Kirin 960, I think, is the latest right now.
Something like that. And then
we have MediaTek, which is meh.
Of course. I don't know why they haven't I mean, I guess that's not their forte is high end. They focus mostly on the lower end of things and affordability.
Yeah, and they make a lot of money doing that.
So, I mean, they don't need to. They don't really need to go high end, but it does mean that there isn't a lot of competition for Qualcomm. And then, of course, there's NVIDIA, which is only in its own NVIDIA products and in the Nintendo Switch because they got pushed out of the phone market. They couldn't really get into it.
So they don't really count.
They didn't have the modems.
They don't really count, right? Yeah, they don't really count. And then Intel doesn't really count either, even though they've made some Atom-based phones in the past. So really, we have Qualcomm, Samsung, Huawei, and Apple. That's it.
Yep.
I mean, MediaTek doesn't count.
Yep.
So there you go. So, I mean, obviously, if you are a smartphone manufacturer, Huawei seems to be keeping the high-end stuff to themselves. Apple is obviously keeping everything to themselves. Samsung seems to be keeping the Exynos high-end stuff to themselves. So what do you have left? MediaTek? Meh. Or Qualcomm. And that's, that's just a huge achievement, I think, for an American company based in San Diego here to have really become such a dominant force. And I think the other reason for that is Qualcomm, it's not just really a chip maker. They are a radio maker.
Yes.
They are the people who invented CDMA, the kind that's used by Verizon and Sprint, which actually set up the groundwork for what we call WCDMA used by GSM for 3G, HSPA. They showed the world that CDMA was a thing that could be used for faster data. And then the European, rest of the world consortium of GSM association and stuff went ahead and drafted the 3G spec with that, based on that technology. And then, they've been very significant player in LTE and the development of LTE. And instead of kind of doing the us versus them thing that they did back then, because they were in bed with the US carriers a lot, they actually kind of joined the GSM consortium to be a part of the LTE thing so that they could very early on include LTE chips in the phones that were power efficient, and then eventually bundle this together inside the system on a chip inside the actual processor. And that's the big thing that Qualcomm has brought to the table. They were the first to really do this, which is to integrate LTE and 3G and 2G and all Bluetooth and Wi-Fi and GPS all in the same chip as the processor.
And that's what really pushed everybody else out of the market, because Intel couldn't do that, NVIDIA couldn't do that. They tried. They really tried. But they weren't able to do that, and they especially weren't able to do that with LTE. They were able to do it with 3G technology, but when it came time to do LTE, which is what everybody wanted, they just couldn't do it in a speedy and power efficient way. It took them forever to do it at all. And Qualcomm just ate up everything in the market at that point.
And not just the hardware, they provided software solutions for phone manufacturers. If you're making a phone and you needed some sort of AR capability or an ISP for your camera or a digital signal processor to do noise reduction on your voice calls, or have a headphone amp that was decent, or have a speaker system in the phone that was decent, or have a touchscreen driver or a fingerprint sensor.
Always on listening for your voice assistant on your phone.
All that
That's
stuff.
something Qualcomm showed us at CES a year before it was everywhere.
Exactly. And look, the fingerprint reader under the screen this year, they announced that, and they have a solution for that. So you got to give them credit for all that good stuff. And, honestly, they're a really good bunch of people. I really enjoy every time I meet the Qualcomm folks. That also helps. There are so many companies that us journalists interface with, and we kind of, grind our teeth, right? You know what I'm talking about?
Yes, indeed.
And Qualcomm is always just super nice and super friendly and super accessible. You email them, you get the answers you want. It's just nice. It's kind of like, folks like Jeff at HTC and Eric at OnePlus, people who really care about the way they work with journalists, and these are kind of people who make our jobs so much easier.
Indeed. So
CDMA
CDMA.
Let's talk quickly about CDMA.
Okay.
I know this is something very important that a lot of people don't understand. So can you give us the 2 minutes cliff notes, because we're kind of running out of time?
Yeah. So like Miriam and I were just saying, CDMA is this 2G and 3G radio technology, mostly 2G, I guess, is the base of it, that Qualcomm had this big hand in, and is kind of one of the big reasons they're still so dominant in the United States, because if you want to make voice calls on Verizon and on Sprint and activate your phones on those networks and some of the white label networks they work with, you've got to have CDMA radios and antennas in your phone. But those networks are going away. In 2019, Verizon is sunsetting, late 2019 and into 2020, Verizon is sunsetting its CDMA network. It's trying to push everybody onto LTE.
Woohoo, finally!
And this is a big freaking deal because, one, it allows manufacturers to use chips that are not necessarily Qualcomm radios or have to pay licensing fees to Qualcomm in order to get their phones up and running on networks. And two, it means that all of the voice calls we're making can be on LTE. It can all be data instead of having to work with the old telephone networks necessarily. And we can move to more sane models for all of this stuff, assuming that there isn't so much profit in keeping things confusing that the manufacturers and carriers stick with something dumb anyway.
True. And so in terms of phones, like I'll give you an example, the HTC U11 was the first phone on Verizon that was LTE only. So it's starting. There are some phones out there that that only use the LTE's network. And so when you do a voice call, it's over LTE. And so of course, if you're in a 2G, 3G legacy CDMA area, with those phones, you're not going to get any signal.
But hopefully you aren't, and hopefully they fix that so that you won't be.
Well, I mean, obviously they've got a pretty good rollout, Verizon, on LTE, and so it's closing the gap. But that's the only thing you should be aware of, is like if you are in an urban center or suburban area, anywhere where you see LTE on your Verizon phone, you can go with one of those phones that doesn't support CDMA and you'll be fine. But if you're in an area where oftentimes your phone goes to 3G or CDMA or EVDO or something like that on the display, then you're going to be SOL if you buy a phone that doesn't support CDMA anymore.
Yeah, look at that indicator on the top of your phone. If you see it go into one of those technologies, that means that in that area you just don't have the LTE yet. But what I'm really excited about is soon I'll be able to buy phones, hopefully, like the Razer Phone, which I'm not going to buy, or the OnePlus 5T from companies that just can't afford to make multiple versions of their phones for CDMA and for GSM. They stick with GSM because it's less expensive, and most of the rest of the world is already just GSM anyway, because they're all on LTE. Theoretically, in the near future, any U.S. carrier, I could take one of those phones
and it is correct.
To another carrier, because they'd all be on the same technology instead of relying on CDMA.
And the first phone sold unlocked like that is the U11. So if you buy the unlocked version of the U11, not the Sprint version, but the unlocked version, it will work on Verizon. It's officially supported by Verizon, but it's LTE only.
Nice.
So we should wrap it up, Sean.
Yeah.
What can you tell the listeners about yourself? Where can they find you on Twitter and all that other good stuff?
Oh, yes. Starfire2258. That's STARFIRE. The digits 2, 2, 5, and 8 is my zany Twitter handle, which carries over from a long time ago in high school. And then I'm at CNET.com. You can read my work there. I just did a whole bunch of Black Friday stuff, including a huge gaming deal guide. So if you want a PlayStation 4, Xbox One, or lots of games, there are great prices there right now that are running out. Hopefully they'll still be available over the weekend if you're listening to this then.
Yeah, definitely. And then the V30 review, I will link to it in the show notes.
Yep.
Check that out.
Razer Phone review early next week.
Awesome.
Look for that too.
And yeah, and that's where you can find Sean, and you know where to find me. I'm Tankgirl, TNKGRL, like the comic book character without the vowels, on Twitter, and you can find my YouTube channel at youtube.com/Miriam Jouar, my full name, Miriam with a Y. And of course, this podcast is hosted by World Podcasts, and you can find it at mobiletechpodcast.com, and also on iTunes and Pocket Casts, etc., etc. Stay tuned for next week. We'll have a show midweek. And thanks for being on, Sean. It was awesome.
Great to have me here. Thanks for having me.
All right. Take care, everybody. Bye-bye.
This has been the Mobile Tech Podcast with Tank Girl, proudly presented by worldpodcasts.com. You can visit us online at mobiletechpodcast.com.